The revolution will be commercialised. It will be valued, flipped and sold for parts like any other commodity. They will rip out its heart and use its chest as vacant property. Those faceless leviathans who parade themselves as pious and play the part of allies when there's nothing left but rioting. They will try to entice you with their siren song, to cover up the sound of trillions being siphoned off. Just remember, your friendly neighbourhood conglomerate will not hesitate to turn your lighting off, you see. They'll happily bump the train as it's leaving the station, but they will never pay the fare, nor will they start the conversation. Mickey Mouse will wear the revolution like a seasonal accessory. His sticky rat fingers will squeeze it for every drop of publicity. He will ride it into a dark and empty entropy, leaving it in social consciousness as a half-remembered memory. I did once have a dream in which a revolutionary thought they could stand tall, quench the fires and bear aloft the modest. And when I woke up, I remembered that sticky fingers will always twist a messiah and turn them for a prophet. I hear the fanfare now. Roll up, grab your I can't breathe face mask, trademark, your Black Lives Matter Versace banner for trendy teens with exaggerated swagger. Hell, we'll even throw in a hammer. Sickle sold separately for those of you with a propensity for bludgeoning your enemies.
C'est la nuit. Pluie. Les lumières du cinéma se répètent par terre. La foule sort, se disperse. Restent deux femmes et un parapluie.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Poetry to Ears. Today we're so excited to have Kofi Achina on the microphone today. We tried to do the recording before, but it didn't quite work out, so we're back again and we're in the recording studio this time, so that's exciting.
Yeah, this is cool.
Yeah.
Hi, Kofi.
Hi.
So what happened last time, Kofi, when we tried to do this recording before?
The Wi-Fi was shocking. The lag was a challenge. But it went well. It was good. It was a good conversation. I think it just couldn't flow as smoothly as it can, like face to face.
Yeah.
Like I'd say something and then there'd be like a 10-second delay.
Yeah,
and
it's
then you
like,
guys would hear it.
you know, these frustrating Zoom conversations that you have, but you're like, this was a nice conversation, but you wouldn't want to hear it back.
Yeah.
So that doesn't really good podcast.
I'm glad I didn't.
Anyway, to introduce Kofi, Kofi is a London-based spoken word artist and self-proclaimed storyteller. He'll speak on anything from sunsets to fascism. He has performed from Brighton seafront to Islington. He managed to worm his way into a Hammer and Tongue Slam final and got a piece published when he was 9.
Yeah,
that's quite an impressive bio. I want to start with when you started writing when you were 9.
Yeah, that's like one of my favourite stories. So there was like a competition in school. So yeah, this is what, year 4 or something, year 5. And there was a competition where everyone in the classes had to write a poem about, I think it was waterfalls. The topic was waterfalls. And I wrote a poem about waterfalls, and then I think 5 people from each class got selected to have their poem put in like this book that they made. And I think my mum has it somewhere. I'm not sure. I haven't seen it in a long time. But I remember reading it again recently and being like, that's actually quite good.
Oh.
It's actually not bad.
So you
still got it.
yourself.
Yeah, exactly. For a 9-year-old, like that was some.
How long was it?
It was 4 stanzas, or verses. But yeah, I think I was just talking about waterfalls.
So what were your thoughts on waterfalls?
I think I liked them. I think they were good. I don't know why. I'd never seen one really. Well, not in person, but yeah, I think I liked them. And then I think I used some really good like similes and metaphors. And they were like, yeah, that's good.
I think something interesting is many poets we talk to say that they didn't get inspired by poetry when they were in school because there were subjects that were unrelatable to their life.
Yeah.
But you seem to quite enjoy it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's one of those things where, because I never really studied like English A-level or English at uni or anything like that. But I've always enjoyed beautiful prose and like really well written like speeches in movies where that character will do like this really impactful monologue or something. I've always loved that kind of stuff. So I think I've had this kind of non-academic love for, I guess, the spoken word. From like quite an early age.
Did you read a lot growing up?
Yeah. I read like I was really big into like my YA novels. So I read like Hunger Games before they made a movie out of it. Like I was always really proud of the fact that I'd been on the train first. I was in school. I used to like get to school really early and then sit in my classroom and then just like read a new book.
Yeah.
And then I didn't read for a long time over uni. I think I just like had other stuff to do.
Yeah. I think everyone goes through that period of like no reading at all, right?
Yeah,
you studied sciences?
Yeah,
or?
chemistry. I did chemistry. So most of the stuff I was reading was like academic papers and stuff instead of like actual enjoyable books. But then I like got Audible recently, so now I've been like back onto my books, even if it is in my ears, but I guess that still counts.
Yeah, and you said you have a separate experience with spoken word or rap.
Well, me and my sister like always used to love do you remember like music channels? Like they used to have music channels. Well, I think they still have them.
Like The Box and VH1 and MTV.
MTV2. We used to like literally get home and then just put on one of those. And there was I think there was like a grime channel, and we used to just like listen to it, and we'd like listen to the lyrics and kind of pick them apart. And
when grime was like totally new, right? Totally fresh.
It was still the next big thing.
I may sound ignorant, but what's grime?
it's like UK rap, but I mean maybe you could get a bit more specific about it.
I mean it's essentially UK hip hop. It's I think grime, when compared to say US hip hop, in my opinion at least, it tends to be a bit more lyrical, a bit more. I think grime kind of has a bit more wordplay and telling a story. Not that US hip hop doesn't do that, but I think grime is very centered on the idea of the beauty in the lyrics and what you're actually saying.
Yeah. Do you think it's more like that than, for example, in America, right? You got mumble rap, and that's really big at the moment, right?
Yeah.
So, like,
I've always preferred UK hip hop generally, just because it's like especially even now you have like Dave and Stormzy and stuff like that. They put so much effort into making the lyrics fun and good, and I think that's...
You mentioned before JME.
Yeah, JME. Yeah, exactly.
This is when I knew grime could be fun.
Yeah, exactly. He's always been like one of my earliest, I think, inspirations, I guess.
Yeah, so bringing it back to the poetry thing, like, I mean, of these guys, who would you say has been an influence in your work? You know, like...
I think bringing it to specifically spoken word, definitely K Tempest. Obviously, like... I've always thought that they're probably the person that's inspired my poetry the most.
Right.
Because from the beginning, obviously they've got that kind of South London twang to their voice, which I love the idea of kind of poetry, but like with a South London accent.
Yeah. So that's where you're from, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Where in South London?
Croydon, from Croydon. Right. Yeah, south as you can get. Yeah. But yeah, I think their poetry is so smart, and it's so lyrical, and I think they, along with like grime artists and stuff, it's been the fun side, I think, of spoken word that I've enjoyed, where it's a bit more bombastic, I guess.
Do you prefer poetry or spoken word with a musical background?
Yeah, that's like always kind of been like one of my dreams to do that at some point. It's beautiful. It's really beautiful where you can, because I love poetry in silence. I love it when it's just the words, but I think the performance of having a backing track, of having like music to go along with it, I think it adds to it. So yeah, I've always thought it was really nice.
What's the difference in your mind between doing spoken word with an accompanying backing track and rapping? I think, I mean, to be fair, if you're rapping is essentially spoken word on a beat, like to a beat, but I think there's a lot of value as well where there doesn't even need to be a beat. It could be something which is quite like melodic, and it just kind of lays a background for the words to go on top. So I've always imagined, say, like one of my more like sad poems having like a kind of like, I don't know how to explain, like a flowy melody behind it to kind of carry it a bit more, and I think just lay a background. I love the idea of background music.
So what's your story with thinking and starting to write poetry for spoken word and be like, okay, this is what I'm going to do now? Yeah,
well, I've always been into rap and hip hop and lyrics, and especially me and my sister, we used to like write together, and she was always the first one to get into like new music or like new bars, or like she'd write something and be like, oh, can you look at this? And I'll be like, that is so good. And so I was always a bit quite inspired by her. But then I think I got to a point where I'd kind of write for fun. I'd write like a little rap about my day or something. And then I think after kind of being more exposed to spoken word, I kind of realized that I think rap felt maybe a little too constricted, where you do have to be exactly on the beat, otherwise it sounds weird. But with spoken word, you can stop for like 4 seconds to let a verse sink in, or you can completely change your flow as you're going. Like there's no constriction to how fast you can speak. So I think I eventually wanted to move a bit more into poetry, but I still love a rhyme. I still love changing flow, like all the stuff that makes rap really good.
So what was that? You said you were kind of exposed to spoken word. Like what was that moment, or what was that series of events where you were more exposed to it, would you say? I
don't remember it specifically. I feel like there should be like a specific moment that I remember, but I think it was just eventually it was, do you know what, K Tempest's album, I can't remember, it's I think something, The Trappings of something, I can't remember exactly what it's called, but I listened to that album and they do spoken word over a backing track throughout, and I just listened to it, I was like, that is so good, I want to do that. So I think that was probably one of the biggest moments of being like, I want to do that, and especially over lockdown as well. I spent a lot of time watching people's sets, and because we all had like a lot of spare time, so I spent a lot of time watching sets and what's it called, there's this channel and book I can't remember, but there's this
on YouTube.
I
no,
can't remember what it's called.
We'll put it in the links.
We'll find it later, but there's this channel and they have people do like poetry, and I thought it was so good, I was like, I want to do that, so I started writing longer pieces.
And then you ended up a Hammer and Tongue finalist.
Yeah. That was like the culmination of my year of getting into spoken word. So that was I think that was summer. That was at the beginning of summer. And I'd done like open mics. I'd been invited to do some feature sets as well. And I think it was like my final challenge to do an actual slam, because obviously it's competitive, which adds a whole new kind of level to it, where you are being judged for your poem.
How did that feel for you?
It was so strange, because I pride myself on not getting stressed about stuff. You kind of take things as they come, and as like the weeks coming up to it, I was like, yeah, it'll be fun, I'll win, I might win it, I might not, whatever, it's fine, I'm just there to have a good time. And then like the day before, I started getting really nervous. I was like, oh my god, I actually really want to win it, I really want it. And then I was like, that poem's not good enough, you need to write a new one in the space of like 2 days, it's not good enough. And so I think I caught myself, and I was like, it's okay if you don't win, like it's your first time, and also like you're valid, you don't need to win the slam to know that you're okay at writing poetry. So it was quite nerve-wracking at a point. It's quite
impressive to make it to the final.
Exactly, yeah.
It means enough people approve of what you do and they find it relatable.
Yeah, I was so happy to even just make it to the final.
So you wrote something new for the final in the end? Like you coupled together something really quick?
Yeah, I edited one of the poems that I'd been writing for a while. So I wrote a poem about my mum, and kind of about the I guess how as you grow up you start to realise the struggles that they went through, but because like as a child you just can't see it. But yeah, should I do it?
Yeah.
Please. Yeah.
Okay. The alarm goes off at 6:45. Veronica wakes up, wipes the crust from her eyes. She didn't get to sleep till 2 last night. Her mind would not stop chittering. It's still dark when she gets the bus, all caught up in the twilight rush. Her waterproof coat weren't waterproof enough. She clutches a pole, shivering. Her manager's mad because she was 5 minutes late. He barks like a dog, spittle brushes her face. She gets in the kitchen, works for barely a wage. In her belly, her rage, simmering. Rejoice, she's done for the day. Gets home, telly on, reaches for a favourite ashtray. On her table, a mountain of bills still to pay. The cruel thoughts start their niggling. Her boiler's still broke, so it's a kettle brewed bath. Her flat's so cold, she needs a coat and a scarf. Even getting off her sofa is starting to get hard. She feels her bones stiffening. It's 11:47 before she slips into bed, but still the thoughts twist, toss and turn in her head. She sank even deeper into her overdraft today. You know, payday always does seem so far away. It's been 2 years since she last got a raise, and her rent's going up because her landlord says that he's got to cover increasing house costs, but her bathroom ceiling's still covered in rot and her kitchen paint's peeling. She told him this months back, and every time she brings it up he says that that he forgot. The cost of living's up, so he's squeezing her for profit. She'd move if she could, but she can't save up a deposit. Almost all her wages going into someone else's pocket, and she thinks, is this the American dream that I was promised? If I died tonight, would I be satisfied with the life I made, or will I carry all of my regrets into my coffin? That's a bit of it. Yeah.
Oh, well, it kind of hits with the ongoing cost of living.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's
so
that was a little bit extra that I added into it, because like it's something that I can definitely relate to. A lot of people can relate to, obviously. So I thought it kind of adds that. I've always loved the idea of poetry being relatable as well, and standing up there and saying something that people can be like, yeah, I feel that too.
Yeah.
I think it brings people together, and yeah, I think it's lovely.
What was that line? A kettle-filled bath.
Yeah,
where you have to heat the water with a kettle and then keep pouring it, right?
Yeah. I remember like times where like our boiler would just break or something, and then you literally had to like heat up a kettle of
I had
water.
baths like that too.
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah, it's so strange to even think that can happen.
Damn. So how much of that poem is factual, like autobiographical, 100%?
It's actually, so what I've done with that one is that I've interspersed stuff that's happened to me, like my experiences and her experiences. So like there's a verse about getting on a bus and like her coat wasn't thick enough or something. I don't know, I've never asked her if she ever got on a bus and her coat wasn't thick enough, but it's happened to me. I've gotten on a bus and I'm soaked because I didn't have a proper coat or something. So I think I've kind of written it from both of our perspectives. Half of the stuff I'd say happened to her, and then half of it happened to me.
It's intense, you know. You're saying it. You say, you know, if you died today, like would you be happy with the life that you made, right?
Yeah.
And it's like
it's quite harsh.
Where did that sentiment come from in your mind? Like, what were you thinking about?
Yeah, that's something that I think I've kind of been experiencing more, having like entered adulthood. Is I think the idea of like what you leave in the world and what you contribute to the world, I guess, and how much you even care about what you contribute to the world. It's something that I've definitely had to contemplate a lot more as an adult, and so I think I imagine that it's definitely something that she would have thought about as well, like in her early adulthood. And yeah, I think it's something that a lot of people probably end up thinking about, like if I died tonight, would I be satisfied with the life I'd made?
And you mentioned the American dream. What is that?
Yeah, so that's that relates to, so she was born in Ghana, and then moved to the UK, and I think that's something that's common with a lot of immigrants, that this idea of the West, and the West being this like haven of prosperity and luxury. But actually, like, she still struggles. We all struggle. Like it's I think. It's quite a big thing in Ghanaian communities that they have this image of us being like the winners, that we made it, but actually
I heard an expression about Europe as being like the golden citadel. I quite like this expression.
It's I think it's a bit of a misconception. I mean, obviously I don't want to downplay it. There are plenty of good things.
I mean, I'm interested as to why you said American dream and not.
I think
it's like a kind of Western dream, almost like a kind of image of like material prosperity or something like that, right?
Yeah. The American dream I think it's something that actually is, it's a bit more Western. The Western dream. Yeah. It's a bit more generalizable.
Yeah, and so I discovered you at Queer the Mic, and so you were an open micer there, and at the end of the show, the organizers decide who's going to be the next feature, and you won the feature slot.
That was awesome. I can't believe that.
So you went from London to Brighton to do this open mic, and then you got the feature slot. What was the poem you performed for that?
So I did what do I even call it? Get Back to Work. I did Get Back to Work, which was amazing. Like they posted the video of it the other day.
Yeah, and the next Queer the Mic is on the 1st of December.
Yeah.
And how long have you got for that?
So that's 10 to 12 minutes, I think.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of working out now what the lineup's
going
to be.
Do you know yet? Do you know what poems?
I'm writing one now to hopefully do for the first time there, which is a bit stressful because it's like in 2 weeks, I think. So it's I've already got like 3 that I will definitely do, And then either I'll do the new one that I'm writing, or I won't finish it, and then I'll do like an old one.
Exclusive then.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to perform Get Back to Work?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. What's it about? Get Back to Work.
So I wrote that one kind of just after lockdown, where there was this whole thing for like everyone needs to get back into the office, and because so many people had been working from home as well, so like there was like quite a bit of outrage about the idea that all of a sudden you had to go back to the 9 to 5, 5 days a week.
Was that your situation at the time as well?
Yeah. Well, I got lucky, so I happened to get a hybrid job where I'm in 3 days a week, but you know, working from home every day would be great. It's just one of those things where I think a lot of people had it worse than I did, where all of a sudden they had to go back in all the time. And then there were a lot of discussions about work in general and pay. And I think I started it as can't believe we're going back to the office. And it kind of grew into this whole criticism of work, I guess.
And also people who couldn't go work from home.
Exactly. Yeah, it was tough, especially after, you know, having the lockdown where we were just at home. Not all of us, but most of us were just at home. And all of a sudden that wasn't allowed anymore. Yeah, should I do it?
Yeah, please. Oh my god.
Okay. This is a public service announcement from your beloved ruling elite. So if you're stood, get on your knees, and if you're sat, get on your feet. We've got 4 little words. We promise they won't hurt. It goes something like this. Get back to work. Yeah, we know you had your fun over the course of the pandemic, sat on your arse rewatching The Haunting of Hill House on Netflix, but we simply can't accept this, so no more furlough for your purse. If you want to eat tonight, get back to work. We've got plenty of roles to fill, hospitality's all the rage. The benefits are splendid. 0 hours, minimum wage, unpaid overtime, unpaid breaks. There's a plethora of perks. So we see no reason why you wouldn't want to get back to work. Take Boxer as an example. He worked until he bled. He toiled from dawn till dusk and didn't stop till he was dead. What a shining standard of the type of labour you should yearn. So if it's glory you wish to earn, get back to work. There are those among you who would prefer to work from home. Have you heard of a little event? It was called the Fall of fucking Rome. What about the 2-hour commutes? We know you love them dearly, and those toxic workplace cultures that leave you vitalised and cheery. Spending more time with your loved ones, yeah, that's a recipe for disaster. Let's ignore those pesky studies that say you might end up working harder. This is the way we've always done it, and change is usually for the worse. So let's conserve traditional values and get back to work. Now this next one you lot won't believe. There are those out there calling for a 4-day working week as if your lives could have more meaning than being cogs in our machines. You don't know what to do with yourselves without our fists holding your leads. Almost sounds like revolution, but you wouldn't be the first. So if you know what's good for you, get back to work. Sure, bills are going up. Rent ain't getting cheaper. It's about time you plebs learn to see the bigger fucking picture. Yeah, we tank the economy, but we've got a simple solution. We just need to make sure that the rich keep getting richer. Some of you may die, but that's a risk we're willing to take. Have you considered just getting a job with more pay? It only costs a couple grand to get a certified qualification, hours in the day you don't have filling out inane job applications, a 7-month probation with a 12-mile relocation for a role with pay rises that still won't match inflation, and don't you dare think about fighting for your rights. You lot are forgetting that you were born to serve. So cough up to your superiors, submit to your landlords, get off your picket lines and get back to work. We'll sprinkle the homeless on the streets so you're terrified of joblessness. Keep you fed on bread and circuses so you never achieve class consciousness. We'll give you false gods, make consumerism your new deity, make money your prayer and the office your church. And above all else, we'll shove this dogma down your throats. It's only 4 little words. Get back to work. That's it.
Brilliant. I feel like it's a great motivation for if you're striking or you're on a protest.
Yeah, I think I tried to
get the troops,
Yeah.
And so during the event, you got people to stay with you, get back to work.
It was so cool.
The energy
was so
massive,
cool.
right?
Yeah.
So how did you do that? Like,
I honestly didn't say anything. They just started doing it. It was
really
because I've it's obviously if you repeat a line, eventually everyone knows to expect what the line's going to be. So I've always, I guess, when it started happening, I was like, there was a point where I was like, get back to work, and I had like a room full of people saying it back at me. I was like, I've made it.
Yeah, so you didn't expect that.
No,
I thought you planned it.
No. It started happening, and I was like, this is the best audience ever.
Yeah.
It was so cool.
Yeah, you're like leading the crowd.
Yeah, cool.
Like there's 50 people saying get back to work with you.
Yeah, I was starting a revolution in that one.
So politics is a big part of your poetry, right?
Yeah.
And how do you balance that in your own mind with like aesthetics or pretty words, images?
Yeah. Well, I think I've always I've always found it a bit tricky to do pretty words, and I always I love going to open mics and seeing a poet who can write the most beautifully imagery filled prose, and it's gorgeous, and I think I would like to try and write more stuff like that. But I think for me, I like a rhyme. I like saying something deep. I like saying things that people can relate to. So I think I naturally lean a bit more towards the wordplay and
well, like it's what you're passionate about as well, right? So like it sets you on fire to like write that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I love a rant.
And in the meantime, when we did the first recording, you read a poem about sunset.
That's what I was going to ask. I was trying to transition into that.
And it's in your bio as well. You write from sunsets to fascism. So let's go into the sunset.
That's definitely one that is a bit more. I tried to make that one nice. I tried to make that poetry, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't mean to like divert the conversation from politics, but it's
happily.
It's just that this poem is one of my favorite of yours.
Because
the audience will want to hear.
I liked writing that one as well, because as much as I love doing poems about politics, I love doing poems just about like stuff that you see. Yeah, well,
I guess we should do the poem first, and then we could talk about it.
Okay,
because otherwise the audience is just getting teased.
Okay, for the context. The other day I was walking up past the Sainsbury's at the top of my high street. As I turned the corner towards the bus stop, the houses and trees parted, and I was presented with a view of the sky. Golden hour. Blue blended with orange, lacerated by candy floss clouds, all lines leading back to the sun, throbbing blood red and barely clutching to the horizon. And I thought to myself, I kind of hate sunsets. I hate them because I don't know what to do with them. I don't know how to appreciate them properly. I wish I could take that beauty and wrap it up and eat it so I could actually feel it inside of me, but I can't. I considered grabbing my phone to take a picture, but photos of sunsets always leave something out. So I acknowledged it like I'd acknowledge a well-trimmed hedge or a dog wearing a jacket, and I moved on. A couple days later, as I crossed the Thames, the sun dipped into the water and lit the river on fire. A whole river on fire. So I stared at the water and then I stared at the sun, and I imagined that if I stared at it long enough, eventually it would imprint on my eyes, and maybe that photo would be good enough. Admittedly, I couldn't see for about 2 minutes afterwards, but I was satisfied. Once the beauty had bitten at my irises, clawed at my corneas, ripped away my lenses and gripped tight my retina, it wasn't until I was temporarily blind. Only then was I satisfied.
It's beautiful.
Thank you.
It's like I had this feeling so many times, and now I've got words to express it.
It's useful.
It's useful. Thank you.
And I mentioned before when I first heard it, it's incredible that you found a fresh take on sunsets, right? Writing poetry about sunsets.
Yeah.
And it's like, at school, maybe you could have had like sunsets. And
things have been so different for me.
And so, what prompted you to write this poem?
Yeah, so that one's about, it's about desensitization, I think, mostly, and the idea, like, when you're a kid and you see a sunset, you think it's the most beautiful thing ever. You think you're like stunned by it. And I think for me, growing older, I mean, it was a specific occasion I was walking around. Like, that's a true story. I was walking around and I saw a sunset. I was like, yeah, that's all right. And I think it's one of those things where I was like, I really want that to be beautiful. I want to see it for the beauty that it has. But I've seen so many sunsets now.
Yeah,
it's not.
It feels like a really true story because you say I was past the Sainsbury's. Like it's quite specific. You know?
I literally, it was this is something I do sometimes. I literally got my phone out and I started talking into it. I was like, I'll do a poem about this sunset that I'm looking at right now.
So you record?
Yeah, well, I'll do like a storyboard, I guess, and then I'll come back to the recording and then write something out of it. But yeah, it's something I find in all parts of my life, really. Sometimes So like the second part where I'm like, I wish I could imprint it on my eyes, and I think it's, eventually you do something so many times that you have to go to new extremes to still enjoy it somehow, and it's dangerous, I think. But
that's what I was going to say. It's like it annoyed you so much that you'd taken it for granted that you really have tried to appreciate this sunset, right?
Yeah. Like I'm staring at the sun.
Where did you write this poem then? Like obviously you had this moment. And did you write it there and then, like on your phone?
I wrote the first bit where I was walking up past the Sainsbury's at the top of it, blah blah. Because that bit was quite easy. That bit was quite easy to write because I was just describing what I was doing. But then the bit about the candy floss clouds that I had to write later because that bit took a bit of effort. And
so you came back to it like later on,
and
so there was something there was something in you, right, that said, "Oh, I've got something here special. Maybe I've got something that could be good."
Yeah.
Right. Like what? Like what was it?
That was probably one of my earlier storytelling poems, and I always love storytelling and people who use poetry or spoken word as a form of storytelling. And so I mean I have loads of like half-started poems in my notes app where I've kind of had an idea, wrote 2 lines and then given up on it. But that was one where I was like, I want to tell this story, and I just want to tell it. It's like it doesn't even like rhyme that much. Like it's not really got much to it other than it's just me telling a story about something that happened to me.
Is rhymes important to you?
Yeah, I love a rhyme. It's like a little kid, but I just love a rhyme. I love it when I don't know. I love flow and I love a rhyme and I love a beat to a poem.
Do you? How important is performance in your conception of yourself as a poet or as a spoken word artist? Like, is that more important than being published, having your work written down? I
would say I started as a performance poet. Like my first kind of ventures into poetry were open mics, and I'd love to maybe one day get published, because I think that's a cool step. It's like a bit of progression, I guess. Well,
you could do like an album, like
that's the thing. I think I'd imagine doing an album first before looking to like get published. I imagine kind of making like an EP or something. I love performance. I love a monologue or like I don't know. I love.
That'd be so lovely. I feel like that's an untapped area in spoken word.
Yeah. Well,
it's like there's Kate Tempest, and then there's no one else. There's so many like small musicians making albums, and it wouldn't do a lot because there's just a voice to record. There's not like 10 instruments.
It is. It's quite a I mean, if you know who to look for, there are people out there, but it's quite underground. It's not obviously mainstream really. So I think it would be nice to get something out there.
So tell us about the London scene.
London
poetry.
London's big. London's got a lot going on. London's very cool. I've found so many open mics just for like Instagram and stuff. But there's so many, and you can probably find one most days. There's a lot going on. There's I've done quite a few in South London. I think my first ever open mic that I went to in London, I went to on my own because I was just kind of bored after work once. What was it called? It was like verse poetry or something. But there's like, and then I did a gig recently at Unheard Poetry, which is like East London.
How did that go?
That went really well. That was really good. Yeah, that was really fun. They invited me. So I met someone, Elle, I met at the Slam, Hamilton Slam, and then she invited me to speak at a charity event she was doing, and then there I met someone who was running this event, Unheard, and so they invited me to do a feature set there. But it was like, it was just like this small kind of bar area, and they have like live music, and it was just really fun. It was really fun.
So you're starting to get paid now for your
Yeah. I'm making a career out of it. It's so weird. I never would have imagined this like a year ago.
Does that put some pressure on writing poetry?
I try to not let it. I've always told myself that it's like a hobby and it's not like a job. I think the more I get into it, the more I'm like, well, maybe I could make this a job. Maybe I could make this full time. But I don't think I will anytime soon.
Yeah.
It's nice to like pick up.
Because you have to get back to work, don't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Our producer Solomon said last week, he said that the good thing about poetry and spoken word scene is that there's not that pressure to be like massive star.
Exactly.
Make loads of money from it, like the same there is with like music or acting.
I mean, the way it is now, I feel like it's like a community, and like it's thriving in Brighton, it's thriving in London, and I like knowing people without being like this superstar, like where you can't even go outside your house or anything. Like I just like knowing, or like seeing familiar faces when you go to events. You're like, oh, I saw you last time. I like the community of it.
Yeah,
so it's fun.
Is it when you kind of, it's very intimate, right? You're like spilling your guts when you up there and you perform. And then, if someone comes up to you during an event and starts asking you about like intimate details of your life, like how do you feel about that? Like,
I guess See, I guess like by virtue, you've already invited the conversation like that, and I mean, me personally, I don't really mind too much about talking about my life because I think it's nice when people can open up about themselves, and in a lot of ways, sometimes it inspires new poetry. Like someone will be like, "Oh, I like that poem that you did about like something that happened to you when you were a kid. Something like that happened to me once," and I think having those spaces where people can be like, oh, that reminded me of something that happened to me, and then you can talk about it because you've both experienced it. I enjoy it. I like it.
I find that you find some connections with people that you wouldn't have had otherwise.
Exactly.
Because you wouldn't talk necessarily about these subjects in a regular conversation.
Yeah. I always say that poetry, doing like spoken word can be like therapy sometimes. Like when I'm up there and I'm doing like something about something that happened to me when I was a kid or something, it's like you're getting it off your chest. And it cuts through the small talk in conversations. Yeah, exactly. You can go straight into the let's talk about
trauma.
Straight
into the trauma.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's the best way to get to know someone.
So we're talking before about like we want to get a bit more involved in the London scene. What advice would you give us?
Okay.
What's the best event to come to?
Oh, best event.
If people are listening out there as well, what's the best event for them to come
okay. Well, of the ones that I've been to, what's the best event? I don't know. I think because some of them have like bigger, some of them are bigger, and then some of them are smaller. So Unheard that I went to, that was quite a small event, and it was quite intimate. And then at the beginning of it, they do a workshop where everyone like writes a poem, or like there'll be a theme, and so everyone gets a chance to like talk to each other and make up like a new poem. So I think that's awesome. I don't know, none really come to mind straight off the top of my head. I haven't been to one in a while, which I should. There's Speakeasy that someone was telling me about the other day, and I was going to go and then I didn't get a chance to, but apparently that's really good, and that's run by someone that I've met who took like really good pictures of me, so I'm like in their debt now. So Speakeasy. Process is another one that I've heard of. I think there's so many on Instagram, like if you kind of, once you start following one, you'll find like 3 more, and then you'll find like 6 more, and none come off the top of my head, but I can like write them down and give them to you.
So if people want to check more of you out, where can they find your work, or where can they find?
So I post most of my poetry stuff on my Instagram, which is just my name, Kofi _Achina. But I'm trying to do more open mics. I'm trying to go to more open mics, and because I haven't been in a while, I've just been like busy and stuff.
Do you post up about like where you're going to be performing as well? Like
I try to.
You mainly on Instagram, or
I'll put something.
So we can catch you then on the 1st of December at Quid Mic.
Yeah. That's my next set.
And then we'll see after that. It was lovely having you, Kofi.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for doing this interview again.
It was even better the second time.
Yeah.
I hope you enjoy listening to it. See you next time.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Restent 2 femmes et un parapluie au coin de la rue. Papotage féminin de robe. La brune rit, secoue ses cheveux. De l'autre côté de la rue, l'homme les observe, de loin, de dos.
Thank you for listening to Poetry to Your Ears.
Son sac à dos pour les imprimés.
This podcast is published as a newsletter on Substack. All of our content is published for free, but if you would like to support our work, you can become a paid subscriber. This will help us afford transcripts for the deaf and hard of hearing community, and anyone who would benefit from reading the podcast alongside hearing it. You can also support us for free by rating the show on Spotify and Apple Podcast, or writing a review on Apple Podcast. Share the show with your friends, fellow poets, and poetry lovers. If you want to interact with us, you can follow us on @poetry2yourears on Instagram and @poetry2 on Twitter, or you can also write a comment on Substack. If you're American and you're listening to us, send us a message. Half of our listeners are American. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time.